Well, thank you all so much for coming to this session. This is the OpenStack User Committee updates. You can see here our current members. My name is Melvin Hilsman.
And I'm Matt Van Winkle.
Thanks, Matt. Sorry about that. So here's the agenda really quick. We're going to touch on the committee goals, and then we'll talk about AC recognition criteria, how we've broadened that out. We'll also talk about the release cycles, which has recently been changed, as you heard in today's keynote. We'll talk about some of the working groups and teams that we're working very closely with, and some things that we're looking at accomplishing by Berlin, and then give some time for some questions. So we have some in-progress committee goals, and this year we're very adamant about user feedback. So we're reaching out to our local user groups and our ambassadors to ensure that we're understanding what's happening at the grassroots level. And one of the things we've been looking at is the community-wide goals, ensuring that they have some user input, which for the past few cycles they've not had any. We also want to have regular meetings with our ambassadors, as I just mentioned, and we're working on talking with them this week very heavily. We have a breakfast that's going to happen on Thursday morning. The other two things that we're thinking about is moving to office hours. Right now, we're constraining everyone to have to attend the times that we've set, but we think opening up things to office hours will give folks, not just in the US, but across the globe, more opportunities to talk with us. And then again, as I stated just a second ago, we'll touch on the AUC criteria updates.
Yeah, and so one of the things that happened recently was Melvin and I were both at the PTG in Dublin, and we spent a lot of time sort of working with foundation staff on how we can strategically sort of evolve the user committee. And one of the big things we talked about was you have a lot of gatherings that are operators and users, whether it's the mid-cycles, OpenStack days, as you mentioned, the regional meetups, and a lot of good conversations take place. But unfortunately, we're not seeing a ton of those conversations turned into change, right, in the software. So one of the things we're working on as a user committee is really getting our arms around those conversations, maybe leveraging all the regional meetup groups and the surveys to generate some common themes across operators, and then put those themes in front of folks like at the mid-cycles and those kinds of things to give us more data, and then as a user committee, take that data and submit forum sessions. Ideally, in the long run, that muscle gets built on its own, and so you would have a case where an operator mid-cycle happens, and in one of the discussion etherpads, someone puts their name down as the one who's going to take that discussion straight to a forum session. But in the meantime, we're going to cultivate that, and we'll talk about some modest goals we've made around that effort for Berlin. So, go ahead.
Cool. So as we stated, the AUC recognition criteria has been broadened. Previously, I think we were, missing at least, we knew 500 contributors. And so what we did was, as you can see here, we voted on these recommended pools. The user survey, for example, PTG ops sessions attended and not just session moderators, OpenStack Days organizers, SIG users, and rely on the SIG leaders to provide us those numbers, and also working groups that don't necessarily fall under the user committee's constituency, but they're very user community oriented, like Women of OpenStack and the Diversity Working Group.
Yeah, it's important because it's the AUC recognition that allows users and operators to vote for the user committee positions that we're in. So we want to make sure we're getting the right representative body of folks to elect these positions.
Exactly.
Yes. Active user contributor is what it stands for. It's an evolution from the ATC designation on the development side. So if you submit a patch and it gets merged, you get ATC credit, and therefore you have the ability to vote for technical committee members and PTLs, those kinds of things. So what the AUC was an attempt to quantify upstream activity by people who aren't writing code. And that's why we're still working with making sure we're getting the right pool of people in there, because we're constantly refining what designates active work upstream when you're not submitting a patch. Is it IRC sessions? Is it meetings, like attending events? Like that's all the stuff we're trying to bake into it.
Yeah, because our last voting pool was about 350 or so folks, I think, and now with, again, broadening the criteria, I think we're looking at about 1,000 to 1,500. Yeah. And again, those folks will have a voice in who's actually sitting on the user committee representing the user community.
Right. All right, so one of the big things it's been going on for a while is a discussion around release cycles and a kind of long-term support, like some people like to say. And there's been some significant progress. A lot of it happened in Dublin just recently at the PTG. I believe there's a talk earlier today.
Yep.
Why is my
During the keynotes about the extended maintenance.
Extended maintenance.
Yep.
So this is just a little bit of what's been going on out there. It's not specifically a user committee driven event, but it's something that we have decided to insert ourselves in and help push along, because there are a lot of operators out there who really need more than kind of the traditional lifespan of a particular release of OpenStack. So we will continue to stay involved in that, and where possible, drag users into conversations or push updates back out to the broader user community as changes happen. So.
Yeah, a key point listed here as it relates to that is refine user survey questions on upgrade models. And so, you know, we have to ensure that, as it basically is saying, that the voice of the user community is talking with the folks who are maintaining these branches, and also hopefully bringing in some people who are a part of the user community to help maintain the branches, but having a very well-rounded view of how things should look going forward in terms of upgrades.
I'll use that as a plug to say, if you don't already, you or someone at your organization really should take the user survey. All the data is completely confidential, so you can tell the foundation about the size of your cloud, the types of services you're running, but that helps us a lot, because then we start to get a feel for all the various deployments that are out there and what they're using. And in the case of this particular effort, we can start to introduce specific questions for more feedback. So it happens once a year. It's open right now. I think it'll be open through like August. So if you haven't already, I'd definitely encourage you to go take the survey.
Exactly. So what we'll do right now is we'll talk about these the working groups, teams, and SIGs who are under the UC constituency right now and who we're working very heavily with. And the first one is the financial services team. So here you can see the co-chairs. I won't destroy their names because I respect these men very much. But what we want to focus on is the past 6 months' achievements and their future work. So as you can see here, the financial services team are looking at establishing voice call meetings, participating in Neutron development, and also publishing a white paper in terms of what they've achieved over the past 6 months. And then what they're looking forward to in the future is integrating, scheduling of VMs and containers for like big data workloads, utilizing Ceph as a storage backend, researching things across multiple data centers. Again, these financial companies are very large. They work across multiple regions. They have to deal with things like GDPR, the recent, policy has been around privacy and things of that nature, amongst the others that are out there. And work on recruiting people from not just APAC, but the USA and EMEA and LATAM areas.
Yep. Cool. So another one that's a pretty active working group in the user space is the Fault Genes working group. They're looking at how they eventually use AI and some machine learning to analyze faults and issues coming out of OpenStack software. A lot of their focus right now is really around better logging and collection of the raw data to begin with. I would definitely recommend, if you're interested in being a part of that, to reach out to Nimatola or Rochelle. They've both been very active in a lot of different user activities for a while. They run a really good group. And I'll just put a plug that all the information about the existing working groups is in the wiki under the governance pages. So you can search for these things by name, and you'll find like the pages for their particular groups, when their meetings are, those kinds of things. Yeah. And I will also add that if you think there's a need for a particular type of working group around a particular type of user space, reach out to the user committee. We can start working with you on how you might bootstrap that up and get that going. So we can move on to the next one, but there's a good opportunity to remind you of those.
Cool. So the next one is a large contributing OpenStack operators working group. And again, what we did essentially for you all is to provide what they achieved over the last 6 months, what their plans are going forward. And as you can see, they're really going forward going to talk about some strategy. So this is a perfect opportunity for you to participate in this working group and help to kind of lead how they move forward and how things will change over the course of the next 6 months and beyond.
Yep. So the scientific SIG, now for just a quick bit of context, working groups and teams are things that are considered largely user-centric and work with the UC on a regular basis. A SIG kind of sits in between. You have some users, some developers. It's not really under a governance model per se of either the UC or the TC. We both kind of help oversee them. So this used to be a working group that's now kind of evolved.
Yeah.
But it's still a great active group. They do a lot of work around high performance computing and the needs of those people trying to do scientific work within OpenStack. If that fits in your boat, I would definitely recommend reaching out to Blair or Stig or Martel. Because I know Blair pretty well. We've done some work together for a while. They're super active. It's a really effective group, and if that's in line with what you're doing, please reach out to them.
Yeah. And then the next is a public cloud working group. We actually have Tobias, who is here, very active, great person to talk with. And like I said before, not to beat a dead horse, but in terms of their past 6 months achievements, they've drafted some missing features for public clouds specifically, and over the past few cycles I know of, they've been flushing out with the PTLs patches that need to land, and bringing extra developers to help land those patches and work on those to benefit the public clouds at large. They've organized their first meetup and official sessions and presentations at the PTG in Dublin, which was really great.
Yep.
We got an opportunity to sit down with them and discuss, what they wanted to do moving forward and how we could be better use for them. And it relates to future work. Like I said, they're very active. They've helped create the Passport program. They're now going to move into version V2 of it. They're helping the testing efforts around SDK certifications and validations, and they're helping to organize feedback as well from these different OpenStack days and working group meetups and sessions that happen again across the globe.
Yeah, before you go on, I should stress that the Passport program was a pretty impressive deal.
Yeah.
So people out there who are looking for clouds to run their workloads on effectively get like a credit or a sort of try it out from a number of small to medium to even large OpenStack-based public clouds. And so not only do they get to try how OpenStack works from an end user perspective, but they get to understand that there's a wide range of folks they can employ in different regions, geographies, and places that may not be the same company, but they can get the same experience. So the Passport was a huge, huge win for OpenStack as a whole. And if I would also not be scared of the public cloud moniker. I think if you do any kind of multi-tenancy in your OpenStack cloud, then you have a lot of the same problems, and I would recommend reaching out to Tobias and understand what they're working on, because they're doing some really good work. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I just another thing to touch on that, since we have quite a little bit of time left. But I think that, like you said, being able to work with public clouds, even on burstability from private to public or multi-cloud things that you're trying to do, the public cloud working group is a great resource.
Yep. No, this is setting up running public clouds on OpenStack, right? So they've got, I don't know, you got hundreds and thousands of individual users out there spinning up VMs every day, right? And yeah, so it's all on OpenStack. So there's 30 some odd, I think, last count, public clouds of various sizes that are running OpenStack. Is that the right count? No, just total. I think we know of like 30 some odd public clouds out there that, thereabouts. So there's a lot, and a lot of them are regional players. But yeah, this is totally not running it on another sort of big public cloud. It's OpenStack-based public clouds. So anyways, just to round out kind of the slides, and then we can take some more questions. As a user committee, we've set some goals for Berlin, meaning like, here's some things we'd like to accomplish. One of them is, as the foundation begins to look beyond OpenStack, the software, into the broader kind of open infrastructure space, there is the Edge Computing Hackathon that looks like it's going to be the week before the summit. That is a space that, strategic focus area, I think is the words that officially get used, that the foundation has a lot of interest in, and so we're trying to help on that space. Going back to what I was talking about earlier about taking specific user feedback out of gatherings and turning it into change, our goal is that we'll have 1 to 3 forum sessions submitted in Berlin by the user committee specifically based on conversations happening at mid-cycles or other user gatherings. So it's modest. Like I said, 1 is a minimum. But if we can make that happen, then it shows like the power of that kind of channeling that feedback. And so that's one of the things we'll be focused on a lot between now and November, is to get that pulled off. And then just that building that muscle around the regular meeting cadence with people who are doing regional work or other sort of user gatherings that aren't necessarily represented at a summit or in an IRC channel or those kinds of things, and really making sure that they feel connected and that we're giving them opportunities to pull resources into those meetings, whether it's connecting them with other active members in the community who might be in the area around the time they're having a meeting, maybe even user committee folks going to some of these regional meetups and whatnot to present or to visit, those kinds of things. And ultimately, also looking at the user survey data to kind of really get a good idea of here's kind of those top, I won't say 5, but top themes that operators are talking about having issues with or needing change in, so we can really drive those other points of feeding that back into the process. So,
yeah, I totally agree. I think that the fast forward upgrades release stuff was a great example in that it started, a big conversation in Mexico City at the Ops mid-cycle that moved to the PTG, then forum session. And so we want to replicate that and see some tangible change.
Exactly.
So so that's pretty much it for the update. If you all have any questions, we'd love for you to ask them now, and
we got about 5 minutes.
Do our best to answer them.
Any more questions, or we'll hang around if you even wants to talk.
Questions.
There are several regional and local meetup groups. One of the conversations actually, we had a conversation around this yesterday with the board and the TC and the UC about how we get to do a better job of connecting the regional meetup groups and user groups with potential speakers and stuff. And so one of the things that the UC will be discussing in the next few meetings is how we maybe aggregate all that information. I mean, and they're all out there in meetup.com, but how do we really aggregate that information and present it back in a way that either A, it's easy for potential members to find those meetup groups, or B, it's easy for those of us who do a lot of OpenStack things and travel around a lot to know, hey, I'm going to be in that city coming up and they're going to have a meetup. Maybe I should reach out to them and say, I'm happy to come chat about X, Y, and Z. So stay tuned. But part of our commitment to pull those groups better into the community is going to be to orchestrate some method for knowing what's going on across all the meetup groups and whatnot. So.
And yeah, there's information currently out now, like if, we unfortunately are not moving at a fast enough pace for something maybe specifically looking for, like there's openstack.org, you click on, I believe, users, and then it'll have user groups there that you'll know are in your region. So there's a number of resources, and feel free to reach out to the UC and not necessarily wait for us to reach out or do something. Everything's open, we want you all to come and talk to us on a continuous basis. So don't feel like you have to wait for someone to provide you some information to be and just be proactive.
Yeah. User-committee at list.openstack, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yes, sir. Yeah.
Groups.openstack.org.
So the basic list is out there. We want to add some detail to it to really help people understand what their needs are from a content perspective and how we can connect them with folks. So we'll be trying to beef that up a little bit. I'm looking at Jimmy from the foundation because I'm making a list of wants that I want to start chatting with them about how we improve the groups.openstack space. So, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It is active. The Passport, in fact, if you want to know more about Passport, I would chat with Tobias in the back of the room. It is very active, and I think they're looking for anyone else willing to join. And they're actually
openstack.org/passport.
Yep. And they're actually trying to ramp that up as well. So, cool.
Any more questions?
Well, thank you guys. We'll stick around if anyone's got any other follow-ups, but thank you for listening.
Thank you. Appreciate it.